All right. So introductions. My name is Aval Espiritu. I'm part of the Lean-YEG committee. For anyone new to the group, Lean-YEG is Edmonton's Lean community of practice. We're a volunteer group focused on sharing practical Lean ideas across architecture, engineering, construction, and everything in between. We are aligned with the LDCC, the Lean Design and Construction Canada, and our intent is simple: learn together, share what works, and continue to strengthen how we deliver work in our region. So today's session is focused on the nuts and bolts of integrated project delivery, IPD, and progressive design build, PDB, with an emphasis on what subcontractors and consultants need to understand during pursuits, submissions, early coordination, the realities of collaborative construction contracts. We have a strong group of panelists joining us today, each bring a different and very practical perspective. We're going to be having Stephanie Carter with Stoke. Stephanie has been involved in collaborative delivery projects across North America, brings deep experience in lean IPD culture and owner and partner alignment. She works directly with teams on behavioral readiness and the organizational conditions needed for effective collaboration. Next, we have Kyle Keep with AME Group. Kyle represents the consulting engineering perspective. He's been actively involved in IPD pursuits, design integration, multidisciplinary coordination. He brings a very grounded view of how engineering partners fit within collaborative delivery and what successful early alignment looks like. We also have Dallin Hall with Delnor Construction. Dallin brings that general contractor perspective. Having worked in both conventional and collaborative delivery models, he understands the reality of being innovative and supporting trade partners in an IPD environment. And finally, we have Ryan Hansen with Ideal Contract Services. Ryan brings the trade contractor lens with 20 years of experience in drywall, steel stud estimating and execution. He's worked in big rooms, supported validation and constructability discussions, understands what IPD means for subcontractors on the ground, both in pursuit and delivery. And facilitating today's conversation is our very own Sarah Becker, also with Ideal Contract Services, and she is part of our Lean-YEG committee. Sarah works closely with both owners and subcontractors and brings practical experience supporting teams in collaborative project environments. She'll be leading the Q&A and guiding the flow of discussion today. Again, thank you all for being here and supporting the Edmonton Lean community of practice. Sarah, over to you.
Well, good morning, everybody. So we are half short in our panel right now. We only have Kyle and Dallin at the moment. Steph and Ryan are gonna hopefully show up shortly. Oh, there's Steph. Morning, Steph. So basically, I wanted to start off with some easy questions. And these are all basically like curated questions that I've got for our panel. If you've got questions too, feel free to pop them in the chat for Aval, and he'll pipe up and tell me that, we've got something else. And our panelists, I've told them already, they're under no obligation to answer every single question. All of our panelists are very different and have really different experiences here. So some things will make sense to them to answer and some won't. And Dallin, you're not allowed to refuse every question. You do have to answer a couple. So yeah, we're going to start. I think the right way to start this is with a couple of questions here about the very basics of these kinds of contracts and what the differences are between them, just in case there are people attending right now who don't quite know what they are. So first question, and hop in whoever feels comfortable answering it. What is the practical difference between traditional design build and progressive design build? Don't all hop up at once.
I can jump in. So fundamentally, it's a contract type and project delivery type where the collaborative models, IPD, progressive design build as an example, it really structures a contract in a shared risk, shared reward way, as opposed to traditional design bid build or CM, where it's individualized contracts. The contract type, it promotes a different project culture. With the collaborative models, it's more of a we versus me, where there's not that contract or financial incentive in traditional project delivery to really promote that behavior.
Yep, fair enough. So then one step further into those collaboratives, and maybe this is a good question for staff. What are the key differences between IPD and PDB? So IPD, integrated project delivery, and progressive design build, since they're both collaborative.
Yeah, so when you first asked the question about, what's the difference between conventional PD or progressive design build and conventional design build, you can modify a standard contract of design build to have some of the attributes of a IPD contract. Then you're building something that's bespoke, and so you have to be very careful about that. But so you can include the risk reward, as Kyle was stating. But a lot of what you can apply, I actually did this thought exercise and looked at, okay, what are the true just minimum things that you can only get in the IPD contract and you can't get in other contracts? And then what are the like 50 to 100 things you can actually do on a design build or construction managed project? And there are many. So I would say progressive design build is a lot more of those things, like the lean thinking, the last planner system, culture building. You can incorporate the team health stuff. And because of CM and DB enabling contractors to come early, you can also enable trades to come early. And so you can do more of that target value delivery effort. What is unique to the IPD contract is that in the contract itself, you don't have to custom make a risk reward system. It's already in there. We agree not to sue each other for several things. Oh, I'm getting okay, muted. But there are still some things that you can't get away from, like negligence. That is still something that anyone can sue each other for. But in general, when you're talking about issues, we agree in the contract it forces you to work together, which no other contract really states. Thou shalt work together during a problem. And then another very unique thing is scope swapping. I haven't seen that on any other contract type, is the ability to scope swap between team members. And that also helps in reducing this adversarial nature.
Yeah, for sure. That can make it more complicated too, hey?
Yes, you have to be very good at tracking and all the paperwork stuff. Yeah.
Totally. So question for all three of you, jump in. When is IPD or progressive design build a good fit for a project? And when are they not?
I'll jump up and speak to this one a little bit just based off the project I just came off of which was a little bit new in terms of IPD. But I've done 3 and a little bit worth of IPD now, but the Edmonton Expo Center renewal was one of the first that's been done in a rehab environment. So I think it was the city of Edmonton. It was the city of Edmonton's first, but as far as we're aware, it's one of the first rehabs that's been tried with that delivery model, and definitely put it through the paces. And we definitely learned a lot of things the hard way along the way of what's possible to be validated for and how to appropriately capture a risk log, and some of the lessons learned that hopefully we're in the process of building a white paper on. Here's what this looks like compared to a typical CM delivery of a rehab, of which can be very paperwork heavy, I'll say, of which I think IPD really flexed. Hey, if the trust is there and the culture is there, you can grab your consultant, you can go for a walk, you can chat through a solution, we can keep moving on site. All of the costs are already on paper, they're tracked, and the paperwork from a consultant standpoint is going to follow. I think it's definitely got some legs, and I'm really curious to see where that goes going forward.
Awesome. So along with that, so when, let's say, subcontractors or GCs are looking at projects that are out for tender, what is the risk in joining an IPD or a PDB? Or is there a project that is risky to be IPD or PDB? I mean, I know you were saying the rehabs could be, but are there other projects that would make you go, I don't know?
I'll jump in. My personal opinion is that the rehabs are actually more suited for IPD because of the need to be agile and the ability to look at the scopes of work interdisciplinary instead of it just being the consulting team at first and then having a whole bunch of change orders once the construction team gets in and observes what's really going on. But to answer your question about like what projects don't really fit, a lot of it comes down to the owner. If
Fair.
they are truly bought into this, they have the capacity, they are of the understanding that they have to allow the team to make decisions, and there's not going to be a more senior person flying in and changing scope or making decisions later. That just derails the process. And I mean, it'll derail any project on any delivery method, but it's really not aligned with the ethos of IPD. So, and that's hard for anyone on this call. You don't know that about an owner, but there are things you can do in the interview process to ask questions to try to glean those kinds of things. But I think that is one typology. Another, IPD has been in Canada for a decade-ish or more. And there was a couple of years ago floating around this kind of thought process that like, oh, 10 million or less, you shouldn't do IPD. But then EPSB has blown that out of the water. They have 2 million IPDs, they have 5 million IPDs, they're successful. And so I think there is, the smaller it is, the more you need experienced people, unfortunately, because you have to hit the ground running and you have to just like do the thing instead of onboarding and training people up. And so the larger projects have the capacity to grow capacity in the market, but the smaller projects don't. But I would say it's no longer no, you can't do a small project with IPD.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I've actually had residential clients ask me if it's possible to scale it down to houses. And I'm sure it is, but it does sound and feel very challenging, right? So we've got a question from Karen in the chat. She said, are there any standard contracts for progressive design build, or are they all bespoke?
I heard, and I could be wrong, but I will check with the president of CCDC, that they are going to be releasing a progressive design build contract. I don't know if anybody else on the call knows more, but that's what I heard at the IPDA conference.
I'm on the CCA board. So I'm going to interject. I think it is in the works. There's also a couple other very interesting ones that are in the works, but I can't really discuss yet. But stay tuned because there's some neat CCDC coming out.
I heard, it's Jack Ashton, I heard that they were actually working on a contract typology as well. So
yeah. Next up, so Steph asked me about this question, and it is a little weird. So in the industry, I've been seeing in the last couple of years, there's been the odd time where an IPD or a PDB project comes out and then later on is converted to CM, a P3, or a traditional design build. So what are the risks or challenges in going into a project thinking it's going to be collaborative, and then that's taken away from you? Or have you guys ever experienced this?
I haven't experienced it, so I'll leave it to somebody else to comment.
I haven't.
That's fair, because I haven't either.
Yeah.
Is Ryan here yet? Okay,
no, not yet.
All right, we'll move on then, because I know he can answer that question. Maybe when he jumps in, I'll grab him again. This is an easy one for all of you guys. What behaviors differentiate a strong collaborative partner versus a conventional one?
I'll jump into this one. So genuine trust, genuine transparency, and we can see that with our trade partners and client partners in all project delivery types, but that's definitely the type of behavior that really shines in an IPD or collaborative project.
Mhm. Dallin, you've done a bunch. What are
Yeah,
your
I'm
thoughts?
just trying to, I'm going to think out loud and I'm going to ramble for a bit, but I think the one thing that I truly appreciate out of all of the teams and partners I've worked with is just the ability to be a little bit vulnerable, because that's what it takes to build that culture. Is if you sit in a big room with me, we're probably going to start talking mental health, and we're going to start talking fundraising, and we're going to start talking about what's near and dear to our heart. And there's some people that just get a little bit squeamish when they're in a big room with me, of which I'm gonna try to get you there, but it's also kind of who I am, and that's, in my opinion, what builds great teams is just wear your heart on your sleeve a little bit. I don't know everything. I'll be the first one to say that, but try hard, work hard, have fun while you're doing it. Like most of the projects I'm on, everybody keeps saying this. Wednesdays are my favorite day. Tuesdays are my favorite day. Part of it is showing up a little bit early and playing a game of crib before you start the big room, because you can talk a little trash and have some fun. Like that's part of IPD. It's how to have fun, but in my opinion, vulnerability is always the word that keeps coming back to me. So
Yeah, for sure. Would you agree with all that stuff? I know you've helped kind of lead a lot of IPD teams and shape the discussions and yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So trust first and transparency, definitely, it's key, because that will actually help reinforce trust. And that transparency can look like, practically looks like, our budget is a spreadsheet. Anyone can view it. Anyone can drill down and see the details. When it isn't a separate system that you have to, like, only one or two people have access to, and they have to bring it to the team, as much as there's good intentions there, it can still, people tell themselves stories, and it just is a hurdle. So transparency is really key. The vulnerability is very important. And communication, like proactive communication, is also another really important aspect.
Yeah, for sure. FYI, in the chat, there's a link for CCDC 32. If you want to take a look at that and provide some feedback, I know the CCA would be really grateful. So what expectations, and this is a good question for Kyle and Dallin, for kind of the estimating side of things. What are the expectations around estimating accuracy during validation and pre-construction for collaborative contracts?
So not having this feedback firsthand, but coordinating with my team who's involved in several IPDs in validation, in preparation to discuss as a group, the transparency is key. In traditional project delivery, when we're providing opinions of probable cost to assist during a design development, a lot of it's back and forth with our trade partners. But with the IPD environment, it's completely transparent. We understand the profit margins, risks, and contingencies at all levels, and that allows the information to have a higher degree of accuracy, lower degree of risk, which is what we see. Dallin, I'd be happy to hear your input as well on this.
no, I'm just trying to think, because I know we've bounced around the idea, especially with a lot of the projects that are coming out now that are CMHC funded, and how do you use a different delivery model for those CMHC funded projects, and is there a competitive process? Not that I'm aware of. Really, it comes down to how do you get the best people to be your best estimators, of which are going to be your contractors, access to a set of design assumptions earlier the better. Get everybody in a room and start to make an assumptions log and start to flush out some of this. I think from an estimating standpoint, we know roughly what cost per door should look like for some of these types of things, and it's truly what can be defined and described, what level of contingency needs to be carried at certain stages, and then truly just have your mechanics, have your plumbers, have your electricians talk about some of those cost escalations that all of us are dealing with coming out of COVID. But no, sadly, I'm not aware of, but that's something that I know we've been chatting about in our office, that curious of the 56 people on the call, somebody please speak up if somebody's got a better answer than that. So
I'm curious, actually, Dawn.
Add,
Go ahead,
Stephanie.
Steph, please. Yeah.
just that LCI actually has some guidance on this, specifically for when you're applying it to TVD, which again, IPD is like the glove that fits the target, the value delivery methodology. So the phases of TVD is the phases of the IPD contract. It's a perfect fit. But you can use TVD on, as I said earlier, on non-IPD projects. But so the guidance from LCI, when we're doing our cost benchmarking, so the client does cost benchmarking, the team does cost benchmarking, you know, it's okay to be in that plus or minus 15%, you know, 20%. It's okay to just, it's rough. And then when we get into conceptual estimating, which is a lot of what is happening in validation, we need to bring it in. We need it to be more like 5 to 10% plus minus. And then once we're past that and really honing in on our FTC, final target costing, and getting into when we're in design, it really should be as accurate as we can, like within 1 to 3%. Like it's got to be dialed in. So when we get into validation, sometimes clients have an expectation that it's got to be on the number. But as long as we are within those ranges, that's what we're aiming for. Then we're good.
Mm-hmm. There's a question in the chat for you guys. Are the private sector companies open to IPD, or is this government contract model only in your experience?
Come on, Steph. You deal with more. You deal with way more.
I do.
clients than
I
that
just have
one,
been
dude.
talking a lot, so I don't want to continue to
Don't worry, it's all
answer all
good.
the questions. So it is not a requirement. It is just by happenstance that municipalities are the largest growth and uptake of IPD in Canada, which makes sense for a couple of reasons. One, they have to deal with public funds, so being transparent about where the money's going is aligns. Another one is there's several municipalities that have had a lot of lawsuits, so if you can like cut that off right off the gate by signing a contract that says we're not going to sue each other, then that makes the business case from a total cost of ownership perspective. And the sizes of the projects are also in the multiple millions, so that aligns. And so private sector, we have worked on private sector projects. There are private projects, but it is a less percentage. And in an essence, it kind of makes sense because they may or may not want to show their details of their base costs, overhead costs, profit, and that's totally up to them.
It totally makes sense, actually, because if you're publicly funded, it's easy to open your books, right? You're kind of like, that's just normal every day. But for a private competitive organization, that's a little harder, right?
Which is actually why Canada is a global leader in IPD. I don't know if people knew this. We're the only country with a sanctioned CCDC 30, like a government contract.
Mhm.
So France and Germany and Spain and Brazil, they all use our CCDC 30s. And it started in the US about 10 years before it came to Canada, but we've had more uptake in it. And I think it's partially because of this public funds and public buildings. The US has states that require you to have, some of the states require you to have bids on a procurement. And so therefore it negates the procurement process of IPD. So there's some hurdles, but also it's a lot more for-profit country. So it could, that could be a factor as well.
So kind of a double question here. So if somebody's pursuing their first IPD or progressive design build project, which I've heard of quite a few that have been pursuing but have maybe not gotten one yet, what would you advise they prepare ahead of award to set themselves up for success? And kind of with that is, what questions should they be asking?
Sorry, just to clarify the question. The question's asking back to a team that they're looking to partner with. Like a lot of this, I think, depends on the procurement method, whether it's waterfall, whether they're partnering potentially with a sub-consultant, et cetera. But I think the one I'm going to throw it to these two while I think about how I want to respond to this. Give me 2 secs.
Sure, I can start with team selection. If
Yeah.
someone's considering pursuing IPD, which I have firsthand experience in, you're wanting to find project partners that you've either have an element of demonstrated collaborative work, transparent behavior, past success and past relationship building, extremely valuable. If you're introduced into a IPD opportunity without that foundation of relationship, then make the proactive effort to get to know the teams, see if there is a culture fit or a culture add, find ways to demonstrate if there is that transparent behavior, that vulnerability, and that's a good start, I think, when assembling a team, looking for the right people more than the right experience or the right expertise, focusing on the people and behavior first.
I love that answer. It's like it's less about the project and more about like dating your team, you know?
Yeah.
There's a question.
I think the one, and maybe it's more of a tangible thing, but we've had some subcontractors that have submitted to some of our projects that we've already been brought on board to, and as much as I might know the team is the right team, sometimes they fall short on the proposal, whether it's the written submission or the interview. And I hate to throw out a written submission, but truly, like, I tell some subcontractors, it might be the best $5,000 you spend, but to hire somebody outside of your organization to put together a attractive proposal that reads well, that we all have money set aside for BD and estimating, but like to watch somebody fumble their way through a Microsoft Word document when somebody could do this way faster and better, please invest a little bit of money into it, because man, some of the proposals we see, and like I don't blame a lot of subcontractors. It's not something they do on a day-to-day, but it is a worthy investment from our stance. And sometimes I know they're the right people. It's just show me in paper. I need it in paper. I need it in writing sometimes.
You know what, Dallin? That's so true. I look back, this story time, I look back on my first IPD proposal that I actually wrote for our company over 10 years ago. Steph was actually on that project. So was Delnor. And man, it is the worst thing I've ever written. There's it's just like 20 pages of words. It was insane. And looking at them now is very, very different. But I think we won those jobs based on the interview, not on my really crappy proposals. But yes, absolutely, definitely important to pay attention to those, because you guys do actually use them, right? The proposals legitimately matter, right?
They do. They're just often scored less than the interview. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. So there's a question in the chat for you guys. Oh, I'm sorry, Steph. Did you want to add?
Yeah, I just said very quick practical things. I get this question all the time. Don't wait for your next IPD. Do lean training, because that is the paradigm shift that is the basis of IPD. And then once you're living it in it, you will get a lot of the things. And then that goes on your CV, etc. Shows that you're like doing it anyway. And if you have your next design, build, construction, manage project, bring in some aspects of remember earlier I said there's a whole bunch of things you can apply. Do them now. Don't wait for the next IPD RFP. And then you can actually speak tangibly to those things when you're applying for an IPD.
I'll add a little trick to that. This is a cheat code for anybody interested in this. When you're doing this lean training, when you're trying these things that are lean, that you're throwing into traditional contracts, document them. Because when you get to that proposal stage, if you don't have the pictures, if you don't have the metrics, then you can't really speak to it without talking really generally, right? So document. Sorry, there's a question in the chat.
Lots of photos.
Yeah, photos, videos, go nuts. There's a question in the chat here. Are there mechanisms like maximum upset limits, pain share or gain share, or incentives to ensure IPD projects stay on budget?
At very broad strokes, most profit milestone release verbiage says you need to be on schedule, on budget, or have a path to get back on schedule and budget. That's the easy answer. The more difficult and convoluted answer is depending on your client and the contract type. there's a lot of avenues to add language into contracts. I know every contract I've been on 4 IPDs. There've been 4 different types of contracts. They've all been wildly different depending on the client and the type and the project. And I think part of that is having the right team at the table, especially in validation, to ensure that if anybody feels strongly about some of that language, and I know especially the Expo Rehab was a big one because we had talked about, okay, what does a wish list look like? What does risk look like? What does validating the unforeseens and the unforeseens, and hey, I'm carrying this on my side of the line in a budget and I don't exactly have something on paper that I can tangibly point to saying this is what this dollar amount's for, but I know I'm going to need it. Historically, I know I'm going to need X amount of scaffolding and fire stopping and these types of things, of which there was definitely a lot of trust built early saying, hey, here's our forecasting tools to ensure that Dallin's not sandbagging his budget and he's not under, and ensuring that some of those scope swaps take place. Like, it's tough. You can add a maximum upset limit, but especially in a rehab, like we had a $100 million rehab. We had one contractor that almost doubled their scope. We had a few massive unforeseens, of which they had a $3 or $4 million worth of additional scope added to them. To put in something like a maximum upset limit for something like that, it's kind of tough to do. Every project's so unique, but I think the writing on the wall and validation, you're able to point the finger, and hopefully you're able to call each other out about potentially a sandbag budget based off some historicals. But a rehab, there is no historicals. Every rehab is so wildly different that you have to have a lot of trust with the 8 or 9 or 10 team members you have at the table to ensure that everybody's appropriately managing their budget and their scopes.
Mm-hmm.
That was really great example. Sorry, thank you, Dallin, for sharing that. And if I'm interpreting the question, the pain share gain share is the strongest incentive to stay on budget, and yet this might be helpful to know also for those who haven't done IPD. Once we validate a project, we're locking in all the prices, including the profit, so that profit, then the numbers don't change. It just, unless we're behind budget, but we don't actually I guess you don't actually get the extra savings as a IPD partner until the end, or realize what the losses are until the end. We're just tracking it through the whole thing. And as Dallin said, the each milestone you're checking if you, like you said, on budget, on schedule, but also what is our risk profile? Like, do we feel comfortable enough to release some profit or not? And also, do we have true savings? Because that's the only way that the profit pool can grow, but also the client gets more value, is if we have true savings. I don't know if that helps that person. Andrew, sorry.
I think these are great answers. Another question from the chat for you guys. What are some great lean training resources you would recommend to consultants that are just starting to learn? And I'm going to answer it before you guys do. Lean coffees. Being a part of this community is number one. But yeah, please.
I'll plug Aval.
Yeah, I was going to say Aval with Red 5. Yeah. There are training resources. Yeah. And they're looking at you today.
I'll say that there are online lean certificates you can get. Gives you a basic understanding. That's great. But what Aval does is give you an applied learning. It takes longer, but it's more of a commitment, and therefore you're really investing in understanding it and applying it to your business. So Aval, I'm promoting Aval.
Yeah, I mean, I'll promote Aval too.
Oh, thanks.
It's also I feel like a lifelong relationship that you start with your lean consultant. They're your therapist. They, they help guide your whole team. Like, yeah, it's a really great relationship to have, and as continuous improvement never stops, right? Next up for you guys. So in past IPD and progressive design build projects you guys have done, what hard lessons have you learned? What was painful to learn?
I'll start off, and it's interesting because every project seemingly has something, but I've been on a couple where we had a bad apple on the team and we carried them along for longer than we should have instead of ripping the band-aid off. I think the team knows sooner than later if one person or one company is not going to be the right fit. And Canada, we're very nice. We don't want to hurt people's feelings. There's the politics game within all of this, but I think it's worth reminding everybody that, especially on a 2, 3, 4 year job, if you want that culture to be as good as you brag about, you need to be able to have the hard conversation early and remove somebody that probably shouldn't be there.
Feedback from the teams who are loving IPD project delivery were similar to what you said, Alan. In addition to that validation is a huge lift. And there may be times during that project delivery where it's emotional, it's hard. I think the term is a pit of despair. But as the teams successfully complete more and more projects, they understand that this is normal, and that culture of collaboration means you're not in it alone, you're there together. And that's time and time again what we hear is, what a huge lift validation is, and then just how much the sky opens up afterwards and how smooth the next phases are.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one
Absolutely.
thing that sorry,
yeah, I was
Steph,
gonna say yes.
I'll say one more. The one thing that I think, just for a lot of people that aren't familiar with IPD, but I know the one heartburn that a lot of teams have is it ties up a lot of good resources for longer than you'd like to admit, especially on the front end. But there is some contractors and some consultants that I don't want to say are adamant that IPD is difficult, but depending on how your company's structured, tying up some really good resources for full day big rooms can be a difficult and can have a lot of heartburn. So definitely something for everybody to be aware of is you got to go slow to go fast, but to go slow means tying up resources for longer than you might like, of which it's tough. It's honestly tough sometimes.
I'm going to add something that I know, Steph, you wanted to add something here too. Because Ryan's not here yet, he's dealing with his kids right now, sorry. But from his perspective, had a lot of conversations with him where he was estimating in big rooms. One lesson he learned was how to kind of be careful with his time, where, like you were just saying, Dallin, it is a huge investment to be a part of the team and to be working in big rooms. And that is awesome. And the collaboration is great. But sometimes you're not needed, right? Sometimes the big room isn't for you. And in those cases, it is hard to do, but you kind of have to find where the line is between being a part of the collaborative environment and sometimes going back and doing the other parts of your job in order to continue helping your company, your business along, not just the IPD project. But that's hard because the IPD projects are so fun to be a part of that, like, it's tricky, but that's a hard lesson to learn, I would say, for sure. Sorry, Steph?
Yeah, those are all great. I +1 to everything people have said. And another one is turnover is a hard thing in our industry already. And it doesn't, like, it'll hurt any delivery method. But I have been on several projects recently where there is just a revolving door on a particular, maybe it's one discipline, and you're just stuck in the mud. It's really hard to move forward. You're constantly onboarding. And the other part of that is that IPD, we kind of create a new company. And if you think about what we know in our own companies, you're losing somebody to replace them is like 1.5 times their salary. The same methodology or thinking has to apply here. And yes, there is competing needs. The organization needs to let somebody go and replace them, and they're making the total decisions. But there's also the need of a very specific dynamic of an IPD team. So at minimum, if the PMT can have advice on who comes in to replace, and or at maximum helps that organization to select who comes in, that would be amazing. But it doesn't often happen. And so then it causes drama and issues.
Yeah, fair. Kind of relevant here, there's another question from the chat. So IPD, which requires collective agreement and shared ownership, how do you prevent a slow decision-making process?
I snicker because I got asked this question in an interview by a client, and my answer was very honest and transparent, but sometimes it's to remove the client from the decision. But
I love that.
I honestly think, and I know there's a couple people from the city of Edmonton in the chat, so I'll be very, very frank when I say we all had a lot of hesitation that the city would be able to do an IPD, because we were very transparent at the interview stage saying, honestly, guys, what pains us on our end is that there's going to be so many layers of hierarchy and bureaucracy that like we're not going to be able to go fast, because when decisions need to be made, they need to be able to be made fast, and we need to keep moving fast, especially in a building like the Expo Center. So from the client standpoint, they put the right people in place that were empowered to make decisions, but the team and the individual pits were trusted to make decisions for the betterment of the project. They report back. People that were in the know made the decision, but I think one of the knocks on IPD is everybody, because we built a good culture, you feel like everybody should have an equal say in decisions. In my opinion, you don't. Not every decision requires all 10 equal votes. The people that are most empowered and most in the loop, and in some cases have the most risk and contingency at stake, you're the ones that are empowered to make the decision, and everybody else either supports that decision or is a bystander from the side saying, guys, I don't feel super comfortable, but if the mechanical team agrees with this, the mechanical team's the best suited to make this decision. So it's a hard conversation to have sometimes with the client, but sometimes some people in the big room are on a bystander only basis.
And maybe I'll ask Kyle and Dallin and Sarah, but I mean, my experience of IPD is that decisions are made rapidly faster than any other delivery model. It's almost overwhelming, especially in the validation phase. I'm seeing nods. Okay. And so I attribute part of that to be that transparency of the work, and therefore the accountability and the drive from the whole team aligned on where we're going. But any thoughts there or experiences you want to share of decision making as it compares?
I think in a lot of cases it's coming prepared to big rooms to make a decision. It's all well and good to make a decision, but if you're not armed with all the data to come in to make that decision, you end up dragging your feet for another week because, I need to go meet with my teams. No, you need to have the decision makers in the room. You need to have some experienced PMT that I can make this decision, and I know my SMT and the rest of my team is going to support me. And that's tough for some companies to hear, because depending on what our resources and who's in the big room, they might not be the right person to make that decision. But I know I've learned the hard way. Tuesdays I can't miss. If I'm sick, I still kind of got to be there, because there's a decision that probably needs my input, because I'm probably the best suited to come armed with the data, and I just need to figure it out. But Kyle?
I was to say the quick decision making in the process is, let's call it 95% positive. The 5% negative and the risks associated with that are the Canadian culture of artificial harmony. Sometimes we arrive at quick questions or quick resolutions for the sake of it, to not avoid the time associated with conflict. So we do have to focus on promoting that healthy conflict. And the other is decision exhaustion. Sometimes it's moving so quickly, so multidisciplinary. You have to continuously promote and engage our team and all team members to have some stake in that decision. To Dallin's point, it's not always one-to-one on decision making, but it can be such a high paced. We want to be aware of decision exhaustion and call it out and make sure that it is a mitigatable 5%, and the 95% benefit we can shine.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think that there's another aspect to this too, which is, like Dallin, you were kind of saying about having these meetings like prepared with the information that you need to make a decision. I think alongside that is expectations for the meeting when that decision is actually going to be made. And like Kyle, you were saying, having the relevant people there. So kind of back to what I said earlier with, not necessarily always being needed for a big room. That's kind of the same thought processes. If that electrical contractor isn't directly impacted by this decision, then we don't absolutely have to include them. And then that maybe that decision anxiety or tiredness or fatigue or whatever might go away a little bit if you know that that meeting, you have that expectation. I know we're making a decision and I know it's gonna be the right decision and I have to be there. You know what I mean? Another question in the chat. If there is one unknown challenge that you wished you had learned sooner, or someone told you sooner how to navigate effectively to maintain performance, what would it be?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah, it's a really good one.
Yeah. It might be a response that's general, not just related to IPD, but
yeah, fair.
Early identification of those conditions of satisfaction. What are the true goals of the project holistically, and then we distill it down to what are the true project goals or group goals at constituent parts. Sometimes we go down a path and it's too late, or it's more late than we'd prefer to find this out and really flesh out some of that target value design and goals, and that applies to all project deliveries.
Mm-hmm.
Alan's thinking.
I'm letting you go first.
You have a thinking face. Another one? Oh, sorry. Did you want to answer that one, Steph?
Nope, it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. There's another one in the chat. How does breakup in an IPD project affect future bidding opportunities?
I like the question. I think we've all been in the industry long enough to know that a lot of people change, a lot of companies can change. Like, I know I don't hold grudges over companies or contractors I've worked with, but it's also one of the things I ask for when we have our tender packages out on the street is I specifically name who's the PM and who's the foreman named, because I know in an IPD, and I'll say progressive design build similarly, there's a lot of flexibility to decide based off of best value, of which I know having the right foreman by a subcontractor is going to add X amount of value to the project. It might not be tangible at bid evaluation process, but based off historicals and based off of relationships between my superintendent and their field staff, et cetera, that is super, super critical. But I will say most of the issues that we probably have in the industry are with individual people and not necessarily individual companies. I think holistically, most companies they mean well. Sometimes they just have the wrong people in positions that they potentially shouldn't be at any given time, of which I think we're all guilty of that right now coming out of COVID. And with all of us as busy as we are, we have some people in escalated positions that they're definitely learning as they're doing it, of which my team no different. We're not perfect, but you kind of give everybody a little benefit of the doubt that everybody's kind of struggling right now. So.
Mm-hmm.
And Dallin, is it probably fair to say that it's not even the right foreman based on that individual team member's performance, but the right foreman for that type of project?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I know even we added 3 additional IPD contractors to the job I'm doing right now, the Fort Saskatchewan Aquatic Center, of which one of the questions was, here's our values. Please talk about how you guys align with our values. And one of the things was building close to home. And to be able to see the PMs and the foremen and the field staff that live in Fort Saskatchewan saying, hey, my kids are going to swim in this pool. Like, I have a vested interest in how well this job goes. Like, I will run through a brick wall for this job to ensure it goes well. So that's what I want to hear. You might not be the best fit, but you're the best fit for this project. So
yeah.
When thinking back to what you guys said at the very beginning of this session about vulnerability and trust, like, sometimes the people in those leadership positions don't have to be your highest performers, but they do have to be your most trustworthy, right? So you look at your leadership a little bit differently about who you would place in a collaborative environment. I kind of see that.
And also a leader who's willing to empower the shop floor, which is a tenet of IPD and Lean. But a leader who wants to control everything, have everything run through them, have a say, do all the work, not delegate, come in and be the hero and swoop in and save. All of that undermines the IPD process. We need to empower the people closest to the work, as the examples, stories here have been showing, to make those decisions, to move the work forward. And when a leader continuously swoops in and undermines their decisions and it builds apathy, people get disengaged. It's not a good situation.
Totally. I think we have time for a couple more questions. So when you guys have experienced the enormity of pre-construction in these collaborative projects, validation, design, heading into actual construction phase, how do you set your construction teams up for success crossing that line?
It's tough. It's the hardest part of, I think, what I do is you build a super great culture and validation. You have all the PMs and engineers rowing in the same direction, and then you bring 10 new team members in, and I'll include all of our techs and all the teams that are in the design process, as well as how do you get them amalgamated and rowing in that same direction, and hopefully aligning with that same culture. But if the culture and values need to change based off of your team doubling in size, then having some of those hard conversations. But I know one of the things we did at Expo is we had what we called flag lunches. So they were facilitated by our facilitator, and we had all the foremen from not only the IPD teams, but all of the different subcontracting teams. So whether you were on the poly party or not, you were a part of lunch. We brought lunch, and every month we had a different topic of conversation. And whether it was one of our values, or we talked honestly about communication or mental health or work-life balance, and we talked about like how to write the perfect RFI so that you can get the answer as quickly as possible from your consultant, because you kind of learn the hard way in an IPD that there's a lot less paperwork. So the skills that you hope your field staff have kind of go out the window because they're so used to grabbing their consultant saying, let's go for a walk, I'll show you. They're not used to actually having to sketch some of this out and write a RFI with a couple solutions and say, hey, we like this one, here's the cost, here's some photos. So that was one tool that I think, regardless of delivery model, I'd like to carry forward, but it requires the culture to be there. But part of that was having our principal architect a part of that, and our CA and ownership groups from like a lot of our SMT members saying, hey guys, like one of the ones that I was pretty honest about is we had somebody come and talk to all of our guys. He was a principal with one of the companies. He'd been married to his significant other for 35 years. I'm like, honestly, I'm like, a lot of our field staff needs to know and hear about like how you guys did it. We're all in construction. It's super difficult. We're workaholics. We all have some issues. I'm like, myself included. Let's talk about like some of the things that you and your wife kind of set in place to ensure success for the marriage, because your home life has got to be good or your work life is going to struggle too. So
I love that. That's awesome.
Like, I can share that in addition to connecting with our trade partners on the personal and professional level, and again, this is independent of IPD, it's more broad to all project delivery. It's the consulting team, architects, engineers, we continue to support our trade partners once we shift into active construction. Regardless of the delivery model, we remain dedicated, connected, and trustworthy, reachable. And then as new team members join the project and we go into active construction, they do feel dedicated and connected to the design team. We try not to build silos, regardless of the delivery model. And in most delivery models, it's perfectly acceptable for all parties on the job site to have my cell phone number, and paperwork to follow, but to be reachable and ready. It continues to promote that culture.
Awesome. I think maybe one last question for you guys, and then we'll hammer down here because I don't want to keep everybody all day. This one I think is kind of broad too, so please, all three. How do you think IPD or progressive design build and projects and contracts have changed over the last 10 years? And where do you see them evolving in the next 10 years?
I might not answer the exact.
Go ahead. Okay. I think we are maturing. We were figuring it out 10 years ago, and we were figuring it out together. And I think through the tales from the trenches, trials and tribulations, we are continuously improving, following the lean ethos, and maturing and getting more clarity and foundations. So this is one of the hardest parts about a collaborative delivery model, is that it is a principled system. It is not got a page by page instruction manual, because you can do it many different ways, but it's about following the principles. And so I think, well, I'm also I'm part of IPDA, and we are focusing on providing more of the guidelines. So with the guideline, you can deviate from, but guidelines to help with the foundations of it, to have clarity, because up until this point, I see our industry as like storming. Now we're trying to form. And then in the future, we will maybe have more norming. But yeah, we're gonna be. You'll see more guidelines, more foundations, more principles. And until this point, we've been doing our best, but it's been very different on different projects.
Any thoughts on the future, you guys?
Yep. I'm glad, Stephanie, you took the approach of describing how contracts will evolve, because I didn't feel equipped to answer that part. But in terms of how the projects themselves may evolve, we will see more of a leveraging of building information modeling, AI, software technology. We've already seen quite an accelerated development of that, and I expect to continue to see more and more implementation. We'll see more sophistication with all of our trade partners being able to use BIM, work within models, work within live mirroring, and we're extremely impressed with the quality of our trade partners in Alberta, and how unbelievably sophisticated and software savvy they are, and that'll continue.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're at time. So I want to first off thank our beautiful panelists. You guys have been wonderful answering these questions so well. Thanks to everybody who asked questions in the chat too. Some of those questions were unreal. Well done. That was fabulous. Just to let you guys know, we have another kind of lean event in December, but it's coming up quick. December 11th, we're going to do kind of a traditional sort of lean coffee / beers, or if you don't drink beer, soda pop or whatever. We do it every year, and we're gonna have to start charging tickets soon because there's just too many people want to come. I'm just kidding, there were like 4 of us last year, but yeah, come join Lean Beers. It's super fun, honestly. We played some lean games last year too, which was great. Make sure you follow us on LinkedIn. This recording is going to be on YouTube. Check out our other YouTube videos. They're really great, and actually they're useful tools for your colleagues, your staff. I use quite a few of them actually to teach people about A3s, teach them about digital poll planning, all those kinds of things. So please check it out. Thanks again, everybody, for being a part of this today. Really appreciate it. And that's all. Have a great rest of your day, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.